In the darkest reaches of the 41st millennium, where humanity struggles against the dying of the light, there exists a chapter of space marines whose very essence embodies the dual nature of fire itself. The Salamanders stand as both destroyers and creators, warriors who bring death to the enemies of mankind while serving as protectors of the innocent. Their story begins not with conquest or glory, but in the fortifiers of creation and the bonds of brotherhood that transcend the cold vacuum of space. Deep within the volcanic world of Nocturne, where rivers of molten rock flow like arteries through a living planet, the Salamanders make their home. But their origins stretch back to the early days of the Great Crusade, when the Emperor of mankind first began forging his legions to reclaim the galaxy for humanity. The 18th Legion, as they were originally known, emerged from shadows and secrecy, one of 3 legions created for purposes known only to the Emperor himself. Alongside the Space Wolves and the Alpha Legion, they formed what whispered rumors called the Trefoil Legions, shrouded in mystery and speculation. The early Dragon Warriors, as they were first named, bore little resemblance to the noble protectors they would become. They were forged in darkness, assembled away from the eyes of their brother legions, their training harsh and brutal even by the standards of the Astartes. These warriors were tempered to endure hardship and pain, suited for desperate warfare where others might break. Their reputation grew not through grand campaigns or glorious victories, but through their willingness to undertake the impossible missions, the battles where survival seemed unlikely and victory even less certain. During the Unification Wars on Terra, when the Emperor sought to claim the last holdouts against his rule, the Dragon Warriors proved their worth in the depths of the Caucasus wastes. The Ethnarch who ruled those desolate mountains commanded ancient relic machines, technology from the Dark Age that had turned back even the Emperor's Thunder Warriors. Yet where others had failed, the 18th Legion succeeded. They descended into the earth itself, boring through solid rock in termite engines, swallowed by darkness and silence until they reached the Tempest galleries far beneath the surface. In those forgotten halls, where the bones of Terra's ancient past lay entombed, the Dragon Warriors faced their first true test. The galleries were a labyrinth of tunnels and vaults, filled with hostile insurgents who knew every passage and hidden alcove. For days, the battle raged in those depths, brother falling beside brother as they pushed deeper into the enemy stronghold. The insurgents fought with the fury of the desperate, using their knowledge of the twisting passages to strike and vanish like phantoms in the dark. Yet the Dragon Warriors held their ground, adapting to each ambush, learning from each assault until they began to see the pattern in their enemy's tactics. When the final confrontation came, they overwhelmed the insurgents through sheer determination and brotherhood, achieving what many had deemed impossible. The price of victory was heavy. The vault floor was littered with fallen warriors, their armor scorched and broken. But in their sacrifice, they had proven themselves worthy of their Genefather's legacy, even though they had yet to meet him. This pattern of deployment continued throughout the Great Crusade. While other legions swept across the stars as massive crusading hosts, the Dragon Warriors remained scattered, deployed in small groups to handle the most dangerous and thankless tasks. They became the Emperor's answer to sudden threats and desperate situations, the force called upon when only the heaviest hand would suffice. Yet they wielded that power with something approaching craftsmanship, understanding that destruction without purpose was merely waste. Their true transformation began with the discovery of their primarch on the volcanic death world of Nocturne. When Vulkan fell from the sky as an infant, he was found by the people of that harsh world and raised by Enel, a blacksmith who recognized something special in the dark-skinned child with eyes that glowed like embers. On Nocturne, where survival demanded both resilience and courage, Vulkan learned not just the arts of war but the deeper truths of protection and sacrifice. Nocturne was a world alive with fire and stone, where volcanic upheavals and tectonic activity created a landscape both beautiful and deadly. The rivers of molten lava flowed like blood through dark valleys, while jagged peaks rose toward star-heavy skies. It was a world that demanded strength from its inhabitants, but also taught them the value of community and mutual protection. Here, Vulkan grew not just in physical power but in wisdom and compassion, understanding that true strength lay not in the ability to destroy but in the will to protect. As he matured, Vulkan became known among his people as both warrior and craftsman. In the forges of Hesiod, he learned to shape metal with the same care he showed for his people's lives. His hands, though large and powerful, were deft and precise, creating weapons and tools not for conquest but for protection. The fire of the forge was sacred to him, a force of creation rather than destruction, a means of building something lasting in a harsh and unforgiving world. The time of trials came each year when Prometheus, Nocturne's moon, drew near and the world grew restless. During these periods, great beasts would emerge from volcanic depths, and Vulkan would lead hunting parties to face these creatures. The fire drakes, massive beings with scales harder than stone and breath like molten fire, were ancient as the world itself. To hunt them required not just courage but wisdom, for they were part of Nocturne's balance, neither wholly enemy nor ally but a force that demanded respect. When the Emperor finally came to Nocturne in the guise of a simple traveler, the meeting between father and son was marked not by warfare but by contests of strength, endurance, and character. Through trials of lifting massive anvils and enduring searing heat, through the forging of weapons and the hunting of great beasts, the Emperor tested not just Vulkan's physical capabilities but his heart. In the final contest, when volcanic eruption threatened both contestants, Vulkan's willingness to sacrifice his own victory to save his opponent revealed the nobility that would define his legion. The moment of recognition between Emperor and Primarch was profound, but it was Vulkan's pledge of loyalty, freely given to one who valued life over pride, that truly sealed their bond. Here was a son who understood that power without compassion was mere brutality, that strength without purpose was wasted potential. In Vulkan, the Emperor found not just a weapon but a guardian, someone who would stand as a beacon of humanity's better nature even in the darkest of times. When Vulkan finally took command of his legion, he found warriors who had been shaped by hardship but lacked a guiding philosophy. They were mighty in strength and tested in battle, but scattered in spirit, waiting for someone to give them purpose beyond mere warfare. In the forges of Nocturne, Vulkan began the great work of transformation, teaching his sons not just the skills of smithcraft, but the deeper truths of the Promethean creed that would define their character. The first tenet of this creed was simple yet profound. Strength exists not as a weapon but as a means of protection, a shield for those unable to defend themselves. In teaching this, Vulkan showed his warriors that their power was not their own but belonged to humanity itself, a trust given to them by the Emperor and the people they served. The second tenet spoke of sacrifice, the understanding that true valor lay not in personal glory, but in shouldering the burdens of others, standing as a bulwark against all who would bring harm to the innocent. The final tenet was loyalty, not merely to each other or to the Emperor, but to humanity as a whole. While other legions spoke of duty in abstract terms, Vulkan emphasized the personal bond between warrior and those they protected. Each life was precious, each person a flame in the darkness worthy of protection. This loyalty was born not of obligation, but of genuine compassion, a recognition that in every human being lay something sacred that could not be measured by strength alone. Under Vulkan's guidance, the Salamanders began to transform from scattered warriors into a unified brotherhood. On the moon Prometheus, in the fortress monastery of Hesiod, they gathered to learn not just the arts of war but the deeper purposes that would guide them. The great forges became the heart of the fortress, places where they crafted not just weapons and armor but the bonds that would hold them together across the stars. Here, in the quiet evenings when the fires burned low, Vulkan would share stories of his youth on Nocturne, tales of the great beasts he had faced and the people he had protected. These stories served a dual purpose. They brought his warriors together in fellowship while instilling the values he held dear. The Terran born among them, raised in the harsh pragmatism of the Unification Wars, found in their primarch's words a warmth that countered the cold demands of conquest. The unity that grew between the Terran and Nocturne-born Salamanders became the foundation of their strength. No longer were they simply soldiers of a distant legion. They had become a family bound by shared purpose and common values. The fortress of Hesiod became more than a base of operations, it was a home, a place of training and refuge where they could return between campaigns to tend the fires of their forges and gather around their primarch to hear his wisdom. As the Great Crusade expanded into the stars, the Salamanders carried these teachings with them to worlds yet untouched by Terra's hand. Unlike many other legions who conquered through fear and overwhelming force, the Salamanders approached compliance with patience and compassion. They understood that true unity came not from subjugation, but from earning the trust and respect of those they sought to bring into the imperial fold. Their campaign on Ibsen stands as both triumph and tragedy in their history. This world of quiet valleys and ancient forests had become home to both human settlers and Eldar refugees, creating an alliance that challenged the very foundations of imperial doctrine. The Eldar, ancient beyond human comprehension, had woven themselves into the fabric of Ibsen's society, serving as protectors and guides to the human population. For Vulkan, this presented an impossible choice. His heart counseled mercy, recognizing the genuine bond between human and Xenos, the peace they had found together in that green world. Yet his duty to the Emperor demanded compliance with imperial law, which brooked no alliance with alien species. The weight of this decision pressed upon him as he walked alone through the mist-shrouded forests, listening to the concerns of human settlers who feared losing their protectors. The battles that followed were conducted with heavy hearts. The Eldar fought not with malice but with desperate grace, seeking to preserve a world they had helped nurture. The Salamanders, bound by duty but mourning the necessity, met them with respect even as they carried out their orders. When the final decision came, when Vulkan ordered exterminatus upon Ibsen, it was with the knowledge that some victories carry wounds that never fully heal. The cleansing of Ibsen became a defining moment for the Salamanders, a reminder that even the noblest hearts must sometimes bear the weight of terrible choices. Vulkan gathered his legion on the ash-covered ground and spoke of the cost of loyalty, of the price they all must sometimes pay for the Emperor's vision. It was a lesson in the complexity of duty, in the understanding that righteousness does not always align with what feels right in the moment. This shadow followed them to Karaten, where they encountered their brother legion, the Night Lords, under the command of Conrad Kurz. What they found there shook them to their core. The Night Lords had brought compliance through terror, leaving villages burned and populations traumatized. The methods Kurz employed went far beyond the harsh necessities of war into realms of cruelty that served no purpose save the satisfaction of inflicting fear. The confrontation between Vulkan and Kurz revealed the gulf that existed between the Primarch's philosophies. Where Vulkan saw strength in protection and guidance, Kurz saw only the utility of fear as a tool of control. Their debate in the ruins of a burned village became a philosophical clash between two visions of what the Space Marines should represent. Vulkan's appeal to their shared purpose fell on deaf ears. Kurz had embraced darkness so completely that compassion appeared to him as weakness. This encounter with the Night Lords reinforced the Salamanders' commitment to the Promethean Creed. They would not be like their cousins, ruling through terror and intimidation. Instead, they would stand as lights in the darkness, proof that strength could be wedded to mercy without diminishing either. The contrast with Kurz's methods only strengthened their resolve to be protectors rather than tyrants. When the Horus heresy erupted across the galaxy, splitting the legions into loyalist and traitor factions, the Salamanders found themselves among the first to pay the price for their loyalty. The drop site massacre on Istvan V remains one of the darkest chapters in their history, a betrayal so complete and devastating that it nearly destroyed 3 entire legions in a single day. Marching to war alongside the Iron Hands and Raven Guard, The Salamanders believed they were part of a massive strike to eliminate the traitor legions that had sided with Horus. The trap was perfectly laid. 4 of the 7 legions involved were secretly aligned with the traitors, their true loyalties hidden until the moment of betrayal. As the loyal legions advanced, confident in their cause and their brotherhood, the trap was sprung with devastating effect. The moment of realization, when allied legions suddenly turned their weapons upon their cousins, created a chaos so complete that even veteran warriors faltered. The Salamanders, caught in a killing field with enemies on all sides, rallied around their primarch as Vulkan's voice rang out above the din of battle. His call to stand fast gave his sons the strength to face the impossible odds, to fight knowing that survival was unlikely, but honor demanded they try. The battle that followed was desperate beyond measure. Wave after wave of traitor forces crashed against the loyalist lines, while the Salamanders held their ground with grim determination. Each warrior fought with the knowledge that they were defending not just their own lives, but the ideals their primarch had taught them. Even as their numbers dwindled and their formation began to break, they maintained their discipline and their brotherhood. Vulkan himself fought at the forefront, his hammer Dawnbringer carving great swaths through the enemy ranks. Yet even his strength could not turn the tide of such overwhelming betrayal. Around him, his sons fell with their duty unfinished but their honor intact, each death a testament to the values he had instilled in them. When the massacre finally ended, the 3 loyal legions had been virtually destroyed, their remnants scattered, and their leadership captured or killed. The capture of Vulkan by Conrad Kurz began a period of torment that would test the Primarch's spirit to its very limits. In the cold chambers of the Night Lord's prison ships, Kurz sought to break his brother through every cruelty his twisted mind could devise. The tortures were designed not merely to cause physical pain, but to erode Vulkan's faith in his ideals, to drag him down into the same darkness that had consumed the Night Haunter. Day after day, week after week, the torments continued as Kurz worked to shatter the unbreakable spirit of the Fireborn. In those moments between agony, as Vulkan lay broken in his cell, he held fast to memories of his legion, of the teachings he had shared with them, of the bonds that transcended even death. It was this spiritual strength, this connection to his sons and their shared purpose, that Kurz could never touch or corrupt. The labyrinth that served as Vulkan's final prison was a masterwork of despair, designed by Purge to crush the spirit through hopelessness rather than mere physical torment. Yet even here, wandering endless corridors that seemed to lead nowhere, Vulkan's faith sustained him. Step by step, he navigated the maze not through cunning or strength alone, but through the memory of those who depended on him, the knowledge that his sons awaited his return. When he finally discovered Dawnbringer and used its integrated teleporter to escape, Vulkan emerged scarred but unbroken. Kurz, for all his malice and cruelty, had failed in his ultimate goal. The Fireborn spirit remained intact, his loyalty undimmed, and his faith in his ideals stronger than ever. The ordeal had tested him to his limits, but had also proven the strength of the bonds he had forged with his legion. In the aftermath of the heresy, as the Imperium struggled to rebuild from the ashes of civil war, the Salamanders faced their own period of recovery. Their numbers were grievously depleted, their fortress monastery damaged, and their primarch bearing the scars of his ordeal. Yet from these ashes, they began the slow work of rebuilding, guided by the principles Vulkan had taught them, and sustained by their unbreakable bonds of brotherhood. The implementation of the Codex Astartes brought new challenges and changes to the Space Marine legions. Robot Guilliman's doctrine demanded that the great legions be broken up into smaller chapters to prevent any single force from wielding the power to threaten the Imperium itself. While many legions protested this division, the Salamanders were granted a unique exception. They would remain unified as a single chapter, their numbers too few to warrant division, and their loyalty too proven to question. This decision reflected both practical necessity and recognition of the Salamanders' unique character. Their recruitment was limited by Nocturne's sparse population and their own high standards for potential neophytes. They chose quality over quantity, preferring to maintain their traditions and values rather than expand rapidly through less rigorous selection processes. Each new battle brother was not just a warrior but an inheritor of Vulkan's legacy, someone who had proven worthy of carrying the flame forward. The chapter's organization reflected their origins and values. The 7 warrior houses of Nocturne each became a company within the chapter, more than mere military units but families bound by shared tradition and mutual loyalty. These companies maintained connections to specific settlements on Nocturne, creating bonds between the Space Marines and the civilian population that strengthened both. The Scout Company, uniquely among the Salamanders, made their home in the high mountain ranges, living lives of trial and hardship that prepared them for full brotherhood. Perhaps the greatest mystery surrounding the Salamanders concerns the final fate of their beloved primarch. Unlike other primarchs who died in battle or disappeared under mysterious circumstances, Vulkan's departure was a choice, a decision made after centuries of leadership that even his closest sons could not fully comprehend. The signs began subtly: longer periods of solitude, journeys into the deepest wilderness of Nocturne, a sense that some new purpose had called to him. When he finally departed, Vulkan left behind the Tome of Fire, a collection of writings and prophecies that would guide his sons long after his physical presence was gone. Within its pages lay hints of a great quest, a search for 9 sacred artifacts scattered across the galaxy. These relics, crafted by Vulkan's own hand, represented more than mere weapons or tools. They were tests of worthiness, challenges that would prove whether his sons remained true to the values he had taught them. The current Forgefather, Vulkan Heston, bears 3 of these artifacts: the Spear of Vulkan, Kesser's Mantle, and the Gauntlet of the Forge. Within the sacred halls of Hesiod rest 2 more, the Chalice of Fire and the Eye of Vulkan. But 4 still remain lost in the vast darkness between the stars: the Engine of Woes, the Obsidian Chariot, the Unbound Flame, and the Song of Entropy. Each represents a piece of their primarch's legacy waiting to be reclaimed. The Tome of Fire speaks of a final trial, a moment when all 9 artifacts will be gathered, and Vulkan himself will return to lead his sons in one last battle. For the Salamanders, this is more than prophecy, it is faith made manifest, the belief that their primarch watches over them still, testing them from afar and preparing them for some ultimate purpose. Every battle fought, every life saved, every act of sacrifice brings them closer to that promised reunion. In the grim darkness of the far future, the Salamanders continue their eternal vigil. They stand as living embodiments of their primarch's teachings, warriors who bring hope to the hopeless and protection to the vulnerable. In a galaxy where compassion is often seen as weakness and mercy as foolishness, they persist in proving that strength and gentleness can coexist, that the greatest victories are often won not through conquest but through sacrifice. Their forges still burn bright on Prometheus, tended by warriors who are also craftsmen, destroyers who are also creators. Each weapon they craft, each piece of armor they forge, carries with it the memory of their primarch and the promise that they will be ready when he returns. In the flames of those forges, in the bonds of brotherhood that unite them, in their unwavering commitment to protecting humanity, the spirit of Vulkan lives on. The Salamanders remain unique among the Adeptus Astartes, a chapter that has never forgotten its humanity, even as it has transcended human limitations. In a universe where darkness seems to grow stronger with each passing century, they stand as proof that light can endure, that hope can survive, and that even in the endless war of the 41st millennium, there are those who fight not for conquest or glory, but for love itself, love of humanity, love of each other, and love of the ideals their primarch died to preserve. Their daily existence reflects this philosophy in countless small acts that distinguish them from their brother chapters. When the Salamanders deploy to a war zone, they do not simply arrive, complete their mission, and depart. They linger, often for weeks or months after the fighting has ended, helping to rebuild what was destroyed. Their battle brothers can be seen working alongside local populations, their massive forms bent over reconstruction projects, teaching civilians how to rebuild their homes with greater resilience against future attacks. The sight of a 7-foot-tall transhuman in power armor carefully tending to an injured child, or helping an elderly farmer repair his irrigation systems has become synonymous with Salamander interventions. This commitment to protection extends beyond the battlefield into the very structure of their recruitment practices. Unlike many chapters that recruit from the strongest and most aggressive candidates, the Salamanders seek out those who demonstrate not just physical prowess but moral courage. Their trials test not only a candidate's ability to endure pain or overcome obstacles, but their willingness to sacrifice for others, their capacity for compassion under pressure, and their understanding that true strength serves others rather than the self. The chapter's relationship with Nocturne itself represents perhaps the strongest bond between Space Marines and their homeworld found anywhere in the Imperium. Most chapters maintain a professional distance from their recruiting worlds, viewing the civilian populations as sources of potential recruits and little more. The Salamanders, however, remain intimately connected to the people of Nocturne's settlements. Each company maintains active relationships with specific communities, participating in their festivals, sharing in their hardships, and celebrating their triumphs. During the time of trial, when Prometheus draws near and Nocturne's volcanic activity increases dramatically, the Salamanders do not retreat to the safety of their fortress monastery. Instead, they deploy across the planet to assist civilian populations in weathering the catastrophic upheavals. They lead evacuation efforts, fight the great beasts that emerge from volcanic depths, and work tirelessly to minimize casualties among the people they consider not subjects but family. This tradition, established by Vulkan himself, ensures that each generation of Salamanders understands viscerally what it means to protect those who cannot protect themselves. The chapter's tactical doctrines have evolved to reflect these values, creating approaches to warfare that prioritize the preservation of civilian life, even when it complicates military objectives. Salamander strike forces are renowned for their willingness to accept greater casualties among their own ranks if it means reducing harm to non-combatants. They have perfected techniques for urban warfare that minimize collateral damage, developed specialized equipment for rescue operations, and trained extensively in medical aid and disaster relief. Their fortress monastery on Prometheus serves not merely as a military installation, but as a center of learning and culture for the entire Nocturne system. The great libraries contain not only tactical manuals and historical records, but works of art, literature, and philosophy from across human space. The forges produce not only weapons of war, but tools for agriculture, medicine, and construction that are shared freely with Nocturne's civilian population. The chapter's tech marines work closely with local craftsmen, sharing knowledge and techniques that improve life across the world. This cultural emphasis extends to their approach to other Imperial institutions. While many Space Marine chapters maintain cordial but distant relationships with the Adeptus Mechanicus, Imperial Guard, and other branches of the Imperial military, the Salamanders actively seek collaborative partnerships. Their tech marines often serve extended tour with Mechanicus Forge worlds, sharing their unique perspectives on technology as a tool for creation, rather than mere destruction. Their chaplains regularly conduct joint services with regimental priests, emphasizing the shared humanity that binds all Imperial servants together. The current era presents new challenges that test the Salamander's principles in unprecedented ways. The opening of the Great Rift has split the galaxy in two, creating warp storms that make travel between sectors difficult or impossible. On the dark side of the rift, entire systems have been cut off from Imperial support, their populations facing extinction at the hands of Chaos cults, Xenos raiders, and worse. For the Salamanders, these isolated populations represent exactly the kind of people their primarch taught them to protect, yet reaching them often requires impossible journeys through warp-torn space. The return of Robot Guilliman and his Indomitus crusade has brought Primaris reinforcements to many chapters. but the Salamanders have integrated these new warriors in ways that reflect their unique character. Rather than simply accepting Primaris Marines as superior replacements for their existing battle brothers, they have worked to ensure that the newcomers understand and embrace the Promethean creed. Primaris Marines undergo the same cultural integration that has always marked Salamander recruitment, learning not just new tactics and equipment, but the philosophical foundations that make them more than mere weapons. The search for Vulkan's artifacts continues to drive chapter activities across the galaxy. Each expedition in search of the lost relics becomes an opportunity to demonstrate Salamander values on new worlds, to show isolated human populations that the Imperium has not forgotten them. The quest has taken them to ancient Forge worlds where they have restored lost technologies, to embattled hive cities where they have broken sieges, and to primitive worlds where their arrival marked the difference between extinction and survival for entire populations. Recent campaigns have seen the Salamanders facing enemies that challenge their commitment to preserving human life in new ways. Chaos cults that use human shields, xeno-species that can perfectly mimic human appearance, and plague outbreaks that require drastic containment measures have all tested their resolve. In each case, the chapter has found ways to remain true to their principles while accomplishing their missions, often at great cost to themselves, but with their honor and their humanity intact. The influence of the Salamanders extends far beyond their own actions through the example they set for other Imperial forces. Guard regiments that have fought alongside them report changes in their own approaches to civilian populations, adopting more protective stances and showing greater willingness to accept tactical disadvantages in order to minimize casualties among non-combatants. Other Space Marine chapters have begun to question their own more ruthless practices when confronted with the effectiveness of Salamander methods. Perhaps most remarkably, the Salamanders continue to grow stronger rather than weaker as the galaxy grows darker around them. Each new horror they face, each impossible choice they must make, each sacrifice they willingly accept only reinforces their commitment to the ideals Vulkan taught them. They have proven that compassion is not weakness, that mercy does not mean softness, and that the greatest strength lies not in the power to destroy, but in the will to protect what is precious in an uncaring universe. As they look toward an uncertain future, the Salamanders remain confident that their path is the correct one. They believe that when Vulkan returns, as the Tome of Fire promises he will find sons who have remained true to his teachings despite every pressure to abandon them. Until that day, they continue their vigil, carrying the flame of hope through the darkness, proving with every action that even in the grim darkness of the far future, there can still be heroes who fight for love rather than hatred, for creation rather than destruction, for the belief that humanity is worth saving not for what it might become, but for what it is right now flawed, fragile, and precious beyond measure. You're absolutely right. I apologize for the confusion. I was updating the artifact with additional content rather than writing new text. Let me write a continuation as plain text output as you requested. The chapter's most recent campaigns have taken them to the furthest reaches of Imperial space, where the light of the astronomican grows dim and entire sectors teeter on the brink of isolation. In these desperate regions, the Salamanders have encountered threats that would test the resolve of any Space Marine force, yet their commitment to protecting civilian populations has never wavered. On the Forge world of Metallica Prime, when a massive Orkwahag threatened to overrun the planet's industrial complexes, other Imperial forces recommended evacuating only essential personnel and abandoning the worker populations to their fate. The Salamanders refused, instead organizing a defense that saved over 2 million civilians while successfully repelling the Xenos' invasion. Their methods in that campaign became a model for defensive operations across the segmentum. Rather than simply manning the walls and waiting for the enemy to come, Salamander tactical squads moved through the civilian areas, organizing evacuation routes, teaching basic defensive techniques to factory workers, and ensuring that every person knew they had protectors who would not abandon them. When the final Orc assault came, it was met not just by Space Marine firepower, but by an entire population mobilized in their own defense, worker-sterned warriors fighting alongside their superhuman guardians with a courage born of absolute trust. The psychological impact of such operations extends far beyond their immediate tactical benefits. Imperial Guard regiments that have witnessed Salamander operations report dramatic improvements in morale and combat effectiveness when they adopt similar protective attitudes towards civilian populations. The knowledge that they fight not just for abstract imperial ideals, but for real people with names and faces and families, transforms ordinary soldiers into heroes willing to make extraordinary sacrifices. Recent intelligence reports suggest that Chaos forces have begun specifically targeting worlds under Salamander protection, recognizing that the chapter's compassionate nature can be exploited through elaborate deceptions. Cults have staged false emergencies to draw Salamander forces into ambushes, while traitor Space Marines have adopted humanitarian disguises to infiltrate civilian populations the Salamanders work to protect. Yet rather than making the chapter more suspicious or less willing to help, these tactics have only strengthened their resolve to perfect their protective methods. The chapter's librarians have developed new psychic disciplines specifically designed to detect deception and corruption, while preserving the trust that makes their humanitarian work possible. These techniques allow them to verify the authenticity of distress calls and identify hidden threats, without treating every request for aid as a potential trap. The balance they have achieved between necessary caution and their fundamental commitment to helping those in need represents a remarkable evolution in Space Marine doctrine. Their technological innovations continue to influence Imperial military development far beyond their own operations. The chapter's artificers have perfected designs for modular equipment that can rapidly transition between combat and humanitarian configurations. Their vehicles can switch from assault mode to mobile medical stations within minutes, while their power armor incorporates systems for everything from emergency surgery to structural engineering. These innovations have been shared freely with other Imperial forces, another example of the Salamanders' belief that their gifts exist to serve all of humanity rather than to provide advantages over their allies. The ongoing search for Vulkan's remaining artifacts has become more urgent as the galaxy grows increasingly chaotic around them. Recent expeditions have followed ancient star charts and cryptic prophecies to the edges of known space, where reality itself seems less stable, and the barriers between the material universe and the warp grow thin. In these regions, the Salamanders have encountered not just Xenos and Chaos forces, but phenomena that defy easy categorization worlds where time flows differently, stellar anomalies that seem to respond to emotion and intent, and ancient ruins that hint at civilizations that predate humanity's expansion into the stars. Each artifact recovered brings new capabilities, but also new responsibilities. The Gauntlet of the Forge allows its wielder to repair damaged equipment and structures through touch alone, but it also creates an obligation to use that power wherever reconstruction is needed. The Spear of Vulkan can pierce any armor and destroy any fortification, yet it seems to resist being used against enemies who pose no threat to innocent life. These relics are not merely weapons, but teachers, guiding their bearers toward the wisdom and compassion that Vulkan embodied. The chapter's relationship with their primarch remains as strong in his absence as it was during his physical presence among them. Veterans speak of dreams where Vulkan appears to offer guidance during moments of moral crisis, while battle brothers engaged in particularly dangerous humanitarian missions report sensing his presence beside them, strengthening their resolve and steadying their aim. Whether these experiences represent genuine psychic contact or the psychological manifestation of deeply held beliefs matters less than their effect. They remind every salamander that he carries within himself a spark of his primarch's noble spirit. The influence of the salamanders on imperial culture continues to grow through subtle but persistent channels. Their emphasis on craftsmanship has inspired artisan guilds across hundreds of worlds to view their work as service to humanity rather than mere commerce. Their treatment of civilians as individuals worthy of protection rather than strategic resources has influenced military academies to include humanitarian law in their curricula. Even their approach to enemy prisoners has led to reforms in imperial detention practices that have yielded better intelligence while maintaining moral standards. As the 41st millennium draws toward whatever conclusion awaits it, the Salamanders remain confident that their path, however difficult, leads toward a future worth fighting for. They have proven that even in a galaxy consumed by war, there is still room for mercy, still hope for redemption, still reason to believe that humanity's best qualities can survive its worst impulses. In every flame they kindle, every life they save, every act of compassion they perform in the darkness between the stars, they carry forward the promise their primarch made so long ago on the volcanic slopes of Nocturne that strength exists not to dominate, but to protect, not to destroy, but to preserve what is most precious in the human spirit. The most profound testament to the Salamander's enduring legacy lies not in the grand campaigns recorded in imperial histories, but in the countless small acts of heroism that occur far from any chronicler's attention. On backwater agri-worlds, salamander battle brothers have spent years helping farmers develop crop strains resistant to toxic atmospheric conditions. In the underhives of distant fortress worlds, they have worked alongside local enforcers to establish clinics and schools where none existed before. These unglamorous missions rarely earn recognition or glory, yet they represent the true heart of what Vulkan taught his sons, that every human life has value, regardless of station or circumstance. The chapter's approach to training new recruits continues to evolve as they encounter candidates from increasingly diverse backgrounds. Young warriors who arrive bearing the scars of Xeno's raids or chaos corruption require not just physical conditioning but psychological healing before they can fully embrace the Promethean creed. The chapter's chaplains and apothecaries have developed sophisticated programs that address trauma while building resilience, ensuring that past suffering becomes a source of strength rather than a weakness that enemies can exploit. These therapeutic innovations have drawn attention from other branches of the Imperial military, particularly those dealing with veteran guard regiments that have endured prolonged campaigns against psychologically damaging enemies like the Tyranids or forces of chaos. Salamander medical personnel now regularly conduct training seminars for Imperial Guard medics and chaplains, sharing techniques for maintaining morale and mental health under extreme conditions. The knowledge that even the transhuman warriors of the Adeptus Astartes recognize the importance of emotional well-being has helped reduce stigma around psychological casualties throughout Imperial forces. The chapter's fleet operations reflect their humanitarian priorities in ways that distinguish them from other space marine forces. Their strike cruisers carry extensive medical facilities, not just for treating their own wounded, but for providing aid to civilian populations they encounter. Their cargo holds contain emergency supplies, food synthesizers, water purification units, temporary shelter materials that can support thousands of refugees during evacuations or relief operations. When Salamander ships appear in a system's outer reaches, local authorities know they bring not just military might but genuine assistance for whatever crisis has prompted their arrival. Recent conflicts have demonstrated the strategic value of this humanitarian focus in unexpected ways. When the Tau Empire attempted to expand into the Damocles Gulf region, they initially found success through their philosophy of offering greater good integration to human worlds. However, populations that had previously experienced salamander protection proved remarkably resistant to alien blandishments, preferring the proven care of the Imperium to uncertain promises from Xeno's powers. The trust earned through generations of selfless service became a strategic asset that formal propaganda could never match. The chapter's relationship with the ecclesiarchy represents another area where their unique approach has yielded unexpected benefits. While many Space Marine chapters maintain formal but distant relationships with the Imperial Church, the Salamanders have fostered genuine partnerships based on shared commitment to protecting the faithful. Their battle brothers often serve as honor guards for missionary expeditions to dangerous worlds, while their chaplains work closely with ecclesiarchy leaders to develop doctrines that emphasize hope and resilience over mere obedience and fear. These religious collaborations have proven particularly effective in combating chaos cults, which typically exploit despair and hopelessness to recruit new members. Populations that have been exposed to salamander-influenced Imperial Creed teachings show significantly greater resistance to corruption, their faith grounded in positive experiences of Imperial protection rather than abstract theological concepts. Several cardinal worlds have formally requested permanent salamander chaplain assignments to help strengthen their populations against the lures of heresy. The integration of new technologies from the Mechanicus continues to reflect the chapter's values in innovative ways. Recent acquisitions include cogitator systems designed to track civilian casualties in real time during urban warfare, allowing commanders to adjust tactics instantly to minimize harm to non-combatants. Their vehicles now incorporate advanced sensor arrays that can distinguish between genuine refugees and potential infiltrators, without requiring invasive questioning or detention. Even their weapons have been modified with stun settings and less lethal ammunition options that other chapters would consider unnecessary complications. The ongoing quest for Vulkan's artifacts has led to discoveries that shed new light on the primarch's true nature and intentions. Ancient data cores recovered from forgotten Forge worlds suggest that Vulkan's crafting abilities extended beyond mere metalwork to fundamental manipulation of matter itself. His artifacts appear to be not just weapons or tools, but teaching devices, each one designed to help its wielder understand different aspects of the Promethean philosophy. The Engine of Woes, still lost among the stars, is believed to be capable of transforming sorrow into strength, while the Song of Entropy may hold the secret to rebuilding what others would consider irreparably damaged. These revelations have intensified the search efforts, but also raised questions about what Vulkan's return might actually mean. Some within the chapter believe he departed not because his work was finished, but because his sons needed to prove they could carry on his mission independently. The artifacts serve as tests of worthiness, ensuring that when he does return, he will find warriors who have truly internalized his teachings, rather than simply followed them blindly. The chapter's influence on Imperial naval doctrine has grown as fleet commanders recognize the effectiveness of their protective strategies. Salamander void tactics emphasize precision strikes that disable enemy vessels rather than destroying them entirely, allowing for the potential rescue of enslaved crew members or the recovery of stolen civilian populations. Their boarding actions focus on securing non-combatant areas first, often leading to the liberation of thousands of impressed workers or captured colonists who might otherwise be written off as acceptable casualties. As the Great Rift continues to divide the galaxy, the Salamanders have adapted their operational patterns to maintain their protective mission despite increased travel difficulties. They have established forward bases on key worlds along stable warp routes, creating networks of support that allow rapid response to humanitarian crises across multiple sectors. These installations serve not just as military outposts, but as centers of learning and aid, staffed by chapter serfs and civilian volunteers trained in salamander methodologies. The legacy they continue to build transcends military achievement to encompass fundamental changes in how Imperial citizens view their relationship with the Astartes and the Imperium itself. On worlds touched by salamander protection, recruitment for Imperial Guard regiments increases significantly, as young people seek to emulate the selfless courage they have witnessed. These volunteers often display exceptional morale and unit cohesion, having learned from Salamander example that true strength comes from protecting others rather than dominating them. Their story continues to unfold across countless worlds, written in acts both heroic and humble, in the steady determination to kindle hope wherever darkness threatens to extinguish it. Each new generation of Battle Brothers takes up the sacred duty not as burden but as privilege, understanding that they carry within themselves the living flame of their primarch's vision. Until Vulkan returns to lead them in that final prophesied battle, they remain what they have always chosen to be: humanity's guardians, keepers of the sacred fire that no amount of darkness can ever fully extinguish. The chapter's most sacred rituals continue to evolve as they encounter new challenges and populations across the galaxy. The Promethean Vigil, a ceremony where Battle Brothers spend days in meditation before the great forges of Hesiod, has been adapted for use on campaign. Portable forge altars now accompany Salamander forces, allowing them to maintain their spiritual practices even in the depths of space or on alien worlds. These rituals serve not just religious purposes but practical ones, as the meditative state achieved during the vigil often yields insights into complex tactical situations or humanitarian crises. The psychological profiles of Salamander recruits have begun to shift as the chapter encounters populations shaped by increasingly extreme circumstances. Young candidates who have survived Tyranid invasions, chaos uprisings, or extended periods of isolation in the void bring unique perspectives and capabilities to the chapter. Their experiences with genuine horror and loss often make them more rather than less committed to the Promethean ideals, understanding viscerally why protection of the innocent matters so deeply. Recent campaigns in the Ghoul Stars region have pushed the chapter's protective instincts to their absolute limits. In this haunted region of space, they have encountered human populations twisted by ancient curses, alien influences, or simply the grinding horror of millennia-long isolation. Traditional imperial doctrine would classify many of these beings as no longer truly human, yet the Salamanders persist in seeking ways to offer aid and protection even to the most drastically altered survivors they encounter. Their efforts in the Ghoul Stars have yielded unexpected breakthroughs in dealing with mutation and corruption. Working closely with Adeptus Mechanicus biologist specialists, Salamander apothecaries have developed techniques for stabilizing certain types of mutation while preserving the essential humanity of those affected. These methods represent a radical departure from standard imperial practice, which typically mandates purging of any significant deviation from baseline human genetics. The philosophical implications of this work have sparked intense debate within the chapter itself. Some Battle Brothers argue that their duty to protect humanity requires strict adherence to imperial definitions of what constitutes human. Others contend that the Promethean creed demands they look beyond physical form to the essential spark of consciousness and compassion that defines true humanity. These discussions, conducted in the great halls of Hesiod during periods of rest between campaigns, represent the kind of moral wrestling that Vulkan himself might have encouraged. The chapter's diplomatic relationships with other imperial institutions have deepened as their reputation for reliability and humanitarian focus has spread. Inquisitors who once viewed Space Marine involvement in civilian affairs with suspicion now actively seek Salamander participation in investigations where public trust is essential. The chapter's ability to gather information from grateful populations often proves more effective than traditional interrogation techniques, while their presence reassures civilians that imperial authority exists to protect rather than simply control them. These inquisitorial partnerships have led to some of the chapter's most challenging missions. When investigating potential genestealer cults, Salamanders must balance their protective instincts against the need to identify and eliminate inhuman infiltrators. Their development of non-lethal detection methods and their emphasis on saving those who can still be saved has yielded remarkable results, with several major cult infiltrations discovered and neutralized without the massive civilian casualties that typically accompany such operations. The ongoing integration of Primaris technology continues to reflect the chapter's values in innovative ways. Primaris Battle Brothers have reported that their enhanced physiologies allow them to work longer hours in humanitarian operations, requiring less rest between rescue missions or reconstruction efforts. Their improved strength has proved invaluable in disaster relief scenarios, while their enhanced senses help them locate survivors in collapsed buildings or contaminated environments more effectively. Recent technological developments have focused on creating equipment that serves dual military and civilian purposes. The latest pattern of Salamander power armor incorporates medical scanners that can assess injury severity at a glance, atmospheric processors that can purify contaminated air for civilian populations, and communication systems that can interface directly with civilian emergency networks. These innovations represent a unique approach within the Adeptus Astartes, where equipment design typically prioritizes combat effectiveness above all other considerations. The search for Vulkan's remaining artifacts has led to discoveries that suggest the Primarch's crafting abilities extended into realms that modern Imperial science barely comprehends. Ancient forge worlds visited by Salamander search teams contain evidence of technologies that operate on principles combining science, psychic manipulation, and what can only be described as faith made manifest. The implications of these discoveries have profound consequences for understanding not just Vulkan's nature, but the potential capabilities of all the Primarchs. Each artifact recovered seems to unlock new capabilities not just in its wielder, but in the chapter as a whole. Battle Brothers report that proximity to the sacred relics enhances their own crafting abilities, allowing them to create equipment and structures that exceed their previous limitations. More importantly, the artifacts seem to strengthen their connection to the Promethean ideals, making acts of compassion and protection feel not like duties imposed from outside, but like expressions of their truest nature. The chapter's influence on Imperial Guard doctrine has reached the point where several regiments have formally adopted modified versions of the Promethean Creed as their operational philosophy. The Cadian 47th Shock Troops, veterans of the 13th Black Crusade, now train their soldiers in civilian protection techniques learned from Salamander tactical advisors. The Vestroyan 23rd Firstborn have incorporated Salamander descent equipment into their standard loadouts, prioritizing versatility and humanitarian capability over pure combat effectiveness. These doctrinal influences have yielded measurable improvements in campaign outcomes. Imperial Guard units that operate under Salamander-influence protocols report higher rates of successful planetary compliance, lower rates of post-conquest insurgency, and significantly better relationships with civilian populations. The knowledge that Imperial forces exist to protect rather than simply conquer has transformed the nature of Imperial expansion in several sectors. As the 41st millennium continues its inexorable progression toward whatever fate awaits humanity, the Salamanders maintain their vigil with steady determination. They have proven that even in an age of unending war, there remains space for mercy, hope, and the quiet heroism of those who choose to serve others. Each battle fought, each life saved, each act of compassion performed in the darkness between the stars adds another page to their ongoing story, a tale not of conquest or domination, but of love triumphant over hatred, creation victorious over destruction, and the enduring power of the human spirit to kindle light in even the deepest darkness. Their legacy continues to grow, written not in the grand chronicles of imperial history, but in the grateful memories of countless ordinary people who have witnessed what it means when strength serves compassion rather than conquest. Until the day when Vulkan returns to lead them in that final, prophesied battle, They remain as they have always chosen to be guardians of the flame that burns at the heart of humanity's potential for greatness. The chapter's most recent encounters with the enigmatic forces known as the Rangdan have tested their protective instincts in ways that challenge fundamental assumptions about what constitutes humanity. These ancient Xenos entities possess the ability to perfectly mimic human appearance, behavior, and even memories, creating scenarios where Salamander battle brothers must choose between potentially destroying innocent civilians or allowing dangerous infiltrators to escape. The moral weight of these decisions has led to the development of new doctrines that emphasize verification through compassionate observation rather than aggressive interrogation. Their methods for dealing with Rangdan infiltration have become a model for other Imperial forces facing similar threats. Rather than implementing harsh quarantine protocols that treat all civilians as potential enemies, the Salamanders have developed techniques that observe behavioral patterns over time, looking for subtle inconsistencies that reveal inhuman nature while preserving the dignity and rights of genuine human survivors. This approach requires significantly more time and resources than traditional purge protocols, but yields far better results in terms of both security and civilian morale. The chapter's educational initiatives have expanded beyond military training to include comprehensive programs for civilian populations on worlds they protect. These efforts focus on teaching basic survival skills, first aid, emergency response protocols, and community organization techniques that enable populations to better protect themselves when Space Marine forces are not present. The knowledge that they have helped create genuinely resilient communities provides deep satisfaction to battle brothers who understand that true protection means enabling others to protect themselves. Recent archaeological expeditions in search of Vulkan's artifacts have uncovered evidence that suggests the primarch's disappearance was not random wandering, but a carefully planned journey to specific locations across the galaxy. Star charts found in ancient vaults on Prometheus indicate a route that connects dozens of forge worlds, each one containing pieces of a larger puzzle that may reveal the true purpose behind his quest. These discoveries have intensified search efforts while raising new questions about what Vulkan hoped to accomplish through his absence. The psychological profiles of successful Salamander recruits continue to reveal interesting patterns that distinguish them from candidates selected by other chapters. While physical strength and combat aptitude remain important, the chapter increasingly values emotional intelligence, empathy, and what their chaplains term protective instinct, the innate drive to shield others from harm even at personal cost. These qualities often manifest in candidates who have witnessed suffering and chosen to help rather than harden their hearts against the pain of others. The chapter's medical innovations have begun to influence Imperial healthcare practices beyond military applications. Techniques developed by Salamander apothecaries for treating severe burns and radiation exposure have been adapted for use in industrial accidents on forge worlds. Their methods for psychological trauma treatment have been adopted by ecclesiarchy counselors working with populations affected by chaos incursions. The ripple effects of their humanitarian focus continue to spread throughout Imperial society in ways that may prove more significant than their military victories. Recent conflicts with Drukhari raiding forces have presented unique challenges that test every aspect of Salamander doctrine. The Dark Kin's predilection for torture and their use of captured civilians as both shields and bait create scenarios where traditional rescue operations become nearly impossible. The chapter has developed specialized assault protocols that prioritize the rapid liberation of prisoners over the destruction of enemy forces, accepting higher casualty rates among their own warriors in exchange for saving civilian lives. These anti-Drukhari operations have yielded insights into the psychological mechanisms that the Dark Kin used to break their captive spirits. Salamander rescue teams now include specialists trained in immediate trauma response, who can begin the healing process even before evacuations are complete. The The sight of space marines providing comfort and medical care to rescued prisoners has proven almost as psychologically devastating to Drukhari forces as conventional weapons, disrupting their ability to feed on the suffering they seek to create. The ongoing integration of Primaris reinforcements has reached a point where the enhanced warriors now comprise nearly a third of the chapter's total strength. Rather than creating division between traditional and Primaris battle brothers, this integration has strengthened the chapter's unity as the new warriors bring fresh perspectives on ancient ideals. Many Primaris Marines report that serving with the Salamanders has taught them to see their enhanced capabilities not as marks of superiority, but as tools for better serving those who cannot protect themselves. The chapter's influence on Space Marine doctrine across the Imperium has become apparent in subtle but significant ways. Training manuals now include sections on civilian interaction protocols that clearly derive from Salamander practices. Equipment specifications increasingly emphasize versatility and humanitarian applications alongside combat effectiveness. Most importantly, recruitment protocols for several chapters have begun to place greater emphasis on character assessment and moral reasoning rather than pure physical capability. The search for the Engine of Woes has led Salamander forces into regions of space where the boundary between reality and the warp grows thin. In these areas, they have encountered phenomena that seem to respond to emotional states and moral choices rather than physical laws. Battle Brothers report that acts of compassion and sacrifice seem to strengthen their equipment and enhance their abilities, while selfish or cruel actions result in immediate degradation of both gear and performance. These experiences have reinforced the chapter's belief that Vulkan's artifacts are not merely powerful tools, but fundamental aspects of reality itself, embodying principles that operate on levels deeper than conventional physics. The implications of this understanding extend far beyond the chapter's own operations to suggest that the universe itself may be structured in ways that reward virtue and punish vice. Such ideas challenge conventional imperial doctrine, but align perfectly with the Promethean creed that has always guided Salamander actions. As they continue their eternal vigil across the stars, the Salamanders remain confident that their path leads toward ultimate vindication. Every life saved validates their choices. Every act of mercy proves their strength. Every moment of hope preserved in the darkness demonstrates the enduring power of their Primarch's vision. They stand ready for whatever trials await, knowing that when Vulkan finally returns, he will find sons who have not merely preserved his teachings but have proven them true through 10 millennia of faithful service to humanity's highest ideals. The chapter's deepest philosophical investigations have led them to question fundamental assumptions about the nature of sacrifice and protection in an increasingly chaotic galaxy. Recent campaigns against the Death Guard have forced Salamander battle brothers to confront scenarios where their traditional emphasis on preserving life conflicts with the necessity of preventing the spread of corruption that transforms life into something worse than death. These experiences have refined their understanding of mercy to include the recognition that sometimes the most compassionate act is to grant a swift end to those beyond salvation. The development of specialized purification protocols for dealing with Nurgle's gifts represents one of the chapter's most challenging adaptations. Working with the most advanced members of the Adeptus Mechanicus and drawing upon ancient texts from the Tome of Fire, they have created techniques that can cleanse certain types of corruption while preserving the essential humanity of those affected. The process is dangerous, requiring battle brothers to expose themselves to potential contamination, yet many volunteers for these missions see them as the ultimate expression of their protective duty. The chapter's encounters with the Thousand Sons have yielded unexpected insights into the nature of knowledge and its relationship to corruption. Unlike other Imperial forces who view all psychic phenomena with suspicion, the Salamanders have learned to distinguish between knowledge that serves humanity and wisdom that corrupts those who possess it. Their librarians have developed techniques for safely studying recovered texts and artifacts, extracting useful information while avoiding the spiritual contamination that has claimed so many scholars throughout Imperial history. Recent expeditions in search of the Obsidian Chariot have taken Salamander forces to the galactic edge, where they have encountered human populations that have evolved in complete isolation for tens of thousands of years. Some of these groups have developed characteristics that stretch the definition of baseline humanity, yet they retain the essential qualities of consciousness, compassion, and community that the chapter recognizes as truly human. These discoveries have influenced ongoing debates within the chapter about the nature of humanity itself and their obligations to protect variants of human evolution. The integration of human populations into salamander-protected worlds has become another area where their humanitarian principles face practical challenges. Ratlings, ogrins, and other stable mutations are generally accepted within Imperial society, but the salamanders have encountered groups whose genetic drift has proceeded further while maintaining their essential humanity. The chapter's willingness to extend protection to these populations has occasionally created tension with other Imperial authorities, yet they remain committed to the principle that consciousness and moral capacity matter more than genetic purity. The ongoing search for the unbound flame has led to discoveries about Vulkan's true intention that challenge even the chapter's deepest beliefs about their primarch's nature. Ancient forges visited by search teams contain evidence that Vulkan was working on projects that transcended individual artifacts to encompass fundamental changes in the nature of reality itself. The unbound flame appears to be not a weapon or tool, but a seed of transformation that could alter the basic principles governing the relationship between matter and energy, between creation and destruction. These revelations have intensified the urgency of the search, while raising questions about whether humanity is ready for such power. Some within the chapter argue that Vulkan's departure was intended to give humanity time to mature morally before such capabilities become available. Others contend that the growing darkness of the current age proves the need for such transcendent power has never been greater. These debates reflect the deeper philosophical tensions that have always existed within the chapter between their protective instincts and their understanding of cosmic responsibility. The chapter's medical core has achieved breakthroughs in treating conditions previously considered beyond Imperial medical science. Working with samples recovered from ancient biologists' laboratories, they have developed techniques for reversing certain types of age-related deterioration and extending healthy human lifespans significantly. These discoveries raise profound questions about the nature of human mortality and the chapter's responsibility to share such knowledge, despite the potential for disrupting Imperial society. The psychological effects of these life extension treatments have proven as significant as their physical benefits. Populations that have received such care report dramatically increased loyalty to the Imperium and willingness to make sacrifices for the common good. The knowledge that Imperial forces genuinely care about their well-being and longevity transforms abstract political allegiance into personal gratitude and commitment. Several planetary governments have requested permanent salamander medical missions, specifically for these morale benefits. Recent conflicts with the Iron Warriors have highlighted the fundamental philosophical differences between creation and destruction as approaches to problem solving. Where Pacharabo's sons see obstacles to be demolished and enemies to be crushed, the salamanders consistently seek solutions that preserve what is valuable while neutralizing what is threatening. Their siege-breaking techniques emphasize precision strikes that disable enemy capabilities while leaving infrastructure intact for post-conflict reconstruction. The chapter's approach to dealing with traitor space marines reflects this same philosophical divide. While other loyal chapters often view their fallen brothers with disgust or hatred, the Salamanders maintain a profound sadness for what these warriors have lost and occasionally demonstrate willingness to offer redemption to those who show genuine remorse for their corruption. These efforts rarely succeed, but the attempts themselves serve important purposes in maintaining the chapter's own moral foundation. The discovery of pre-age of strife human colonies in previously unexplored regions has presented unique challenges for the chapter's protective mission. These populations have developed technologies and social structures completely independent of imperial influence, often achieving remarkable stability and prosperity without the authoritarian framework that characterizes most imperial worlds. The question of whether such societies should be brought into compliance or left to continue their independent development has sparked intense debate within the chapter leadership. As the search for the Song of Entropy continues across the Outer Rim territories, Salamander forces have encountered phenomena that suggest this final artifact may be fundamentally different from the others. Rather than being a physical object that can be recovered and wielded, the song appears to be a principle or process that exists wherever harmony emerges from chaos, wherever creation triumphs over destruction, wherever hope persists despite despair. The implications of this understanding transform the search from a quest for a lost relic into a mission to understand and embody the deepest truths of existence itself. The chapter's influence on imperial culture has reached the point where entire sectors have adopted modified versions of the Promethean Creed as foundational principles for their governance. These regions report significantly higher rates of technological innovation, lower levels of civil unrest, and greater resistance to chaos corruption than comparable areas operating under traditional imperial doctrine. The knowledge that strength serves protection rather than domination has transformed not just military operations, but economic, social, and spiritual aspects of human civilization. Their story continues to unfold across countless worlds, and through countless acts of heroism, both great and small, each one adding to the growing legacy of what it means to serve humanity's highest aspirations rather than its basest fears. Until the day when all 9 artifacts are recovered, and Vulkan returns to lead them in whatever final trial awaits, the Salamanders remain what they have always chosen to be: living proof that even in the darkest of times, the flame of hope burns eternal in hearts brave enough to kindle it, and strong enough to guard it against all the darkness the galaxy can conjure. The chapter's most profound transformation in recent centuries has been their evolution from protectors of individual worlds to guardians of entire stellar regions. As the Imperium's traditional command structures have become increasingly strained by the galaxy's growing instability, the Salamanders have found themselves taking on responsibilities that would normally fall to sector governors or fleet commanders. Their reputation for competence and genuine concern for civilian welfare has made them the natural choice for coordinating defensive efforts across multiple systems. This expanded role has required fundamental changes in how the chapter operates. Battle Brothers now receive training in logistics, economics, and civil administration, alongside their traditional martial disciplines. The Fortress Monastery on Prometheus has grown to accommodate new departments dedicated to long-range strategic planning and intersystem coordination. These adaptations represent a unique development within the Adeptus Astartes, as most chapters remain focused purely on military operations, while leaving governance to civilian authorities. The psychological challenges of this broader responsibility have proven as significant as the practical ones. Many Battle Brothers struggle with the knowledge that their decisions now affect billions of lives across dozens of worlds. The weight of such responsibility has led to new forms of meditation and spiritual practice within the chapter, as warriors seek to maintain their individual humanity while managing cosmic-scale obligations. Their chaplains have developed counseling techniques specifically designed to help Battle Brothers process the emotional burden of protecting entire civilizations. Recent encounters with the Necrons have forced the chapter to confront enemies whose motivations and capabilities transcend human understanding. Unlike chaos forces, which corrupt human nature, or xeno-species that compete with humanity for resources. The Necrons represent a form of existence so alien that traditional concepts of mercy or redemption become meaningless. The chapter's response has been to focus on protecting human populations from Necron harvesting, while avoiding direct confrontation with forces they cannot hope to understand or influence. These campaigns against the Necrons have yielded tactical innovations that emphasize evasion and preservation over direct combat. Salamander forces have become expert at rapidly evacuating civilian populations from threatened worlds, establishing hidden refuges that can sustain communities for decades if necessary, and creating early warning networks that can detect Necron awakening patterns. Their willingness to abandon territory in order to preserve lives represents a strategic flexibility that many Imperial commanders find difficult to accept. The ongoing search for Vulkan's artifacts has revealed connections between the lost relics and fundamental forces that govern the galaxy itself. Ancient texts suggest that the 9 artifacts were never meant to be simple tools, but rather focal points for principles that exist throughout creation. The discovery that similar objects exist on worlds that Vulkan never visited implies that the Primarch was working within a framework of cosmic law that transcends individual planets or even species. This understanding has transformed the chapter's approach to the search from archaeological expedition to philosophical quest. Teams seeking the artifacts now include not just warriors and technical specialists, but also scholars, theologians, and even artists whose different perspectives might reveal aspects of the relics that purely military analysis would miss. The recognition that the artifacts respond to understanding rather than force has led to search techniques that emphasize meditation, contemplation, and spiritual preparation over conventional investigation methods. The chapter's educational initiatives have expanded to include comprehensive programs for developing human potential beyond mere survival skills. Working with populations on worlds they protect, Salamander teachers help individuals discover and develop talents that might otherwise remain dormant. These programs have produced remarkable results, with many participants achieving capabilities that border on what other Imperial institutions would classify as minor psychic phenomena, though the Salamanders interpret these developments as natural human potential, awakened through proper guidance. The philosophical implications of these educational successes have sparked debate within the chapter about the true nature of human capability and limitation. If ordinary civilians can achieve extraordinary abilities through proper training and encouragement, what does this suggest about the artificial barriers that Imperial society typically places on human development? The question of whether the chapter should continue expanding such programs despite potential conflicts with established Imperial doctrine represents one of their most challenging contemporary debates. Recent conflicts with renegade Space Marine warbands have demonstrated the profound differences between the Salamanders and their fallen brothers. Where renegades typically use their enhanced capabilities to dominate and exploit civilian populations, the Salamanders employ their strength to elevate and empower those same groups. The contrast has proven so stark that several renegade warriors have voluntarily surrendered to Salamander forces, requesting the opportunity to serve populations they had previously oppressed. These redemption cases present complex challenges for the chapter's leadership. Imperial doctrine typically demands that traitor Astartes be executed without mercy, yet the Salamander's emphasis on forgiveness and second chances conflicts with such absolute judgments. The chapter has developed careful protocols for evaluating genuine repentance versus deception, though they remain willing to accept risks in order to offer authentic redemption opportunities to those who seek them. As the 41st millennium continues its inexorable progression through darkness toward whatever destiny awaits humanity, the Salamanders have evolved into something unique within the Imperium, a force that fights not just for survival, but for transformation, not merely for victory. but for the elevation of human consciousness itself. Their legacy continues to expand through countless small acts of kindness and wisdom, each one contributing to a growing network of communities that understand strength as service and power as responsibility. The flame they guard burns brighter with each passing year, sustained not by hatred of enemies, but by love of what humanity can become when its highest ideals are embodied in action. Until Vulkan returns to witness what his sons have built upon the foundation he established, they continue their eternal vigil, proving that even in a galaxy consumed by war and corruption, there remains space for hope, growth, and the quiet heroism of those who choose to kindle light rather than curse the darkness. The sacred forges and craftsmen culture of the Salamanders within the volcanic heart of Nocturne and across the chapter's domain. The art of craftsmanship represents far more than mere production of weapons and equipment. For the Salamanders, the forge serves as both temple and classroom, where the fundamental principles of creation triumph over destruction through patient skill and devotion to excellence. Every battle brother learns to work metal not as a secondary skill, but as a core expression of his spiritual identity, understanding that the ability to create beauty and utility from raw materials mirrors their larger mission of protecting and nurturing human civilization. The great forges of the fortress monastery on Prometheus operate continuously, their fires fed by geothermal vents that tap directly into the moon's molten core. These installations represent technological marvels that blend ancient craftsmanship techniques with the most advanced metallurgy available to the Imperium. The forges can work materials that would challenge even Mechanicus facilities, yet they retain the personal touch and individual artistry that mass production facilities necessarily sacrifice for efficiency. Each forge within the complex serves specialized purposes that reflect different aspects of Salamander philosophy. The Forge of Remembrance creates memorial items for fallen battle brothers and honored civilians, crafting objects of such beauty and meaning that they become treasured heirlooms passed down through generations. The Forge of Hope produces tools and implements for civilian use, from agricultural equipment to medical instruments, all designed with the durability and elegance that characterizes Salamander workmanship. The Forge of Fury creates the chapter's weapons of war, but even these implements of destruction bear decorative elements and careful finishing that speak to their creator's refusal to let necessity eclipse artistry. The training of new battle brothers includes mandatory periods of apprenticeship at each forge, ensuring that every warrior understands the full spectrum of creation. Neophytes begin with simple projects repairing damaged equipment, creating basic tools, learning to distinguish between different metals and their properties. As they advance, they take on increasingly complex challenges that test not just their technical skills, but their patience, creativity, and ability to see beauty in functional design. The relationship between master and apprentice in these forges differs significantly from typical Space Marine training hierarchies. While military instruction often emphasizes immediate obedience and precise replication of demonstrated techniques, forge work encourages questions, experimentation, and individual expression within established principles. Veterans take genuine pride in seeing apprentices develop unique styles and approaches, understanding that diversity of technique strengthens the chapter's overall capabilities. The chapter's master artificers have developed innovations that influence Imperial technology far beyond their own operations. Their designs for modular equipment that can be rapidly reconfigured for different missions have been adopted by several other Space Marine chapters and Imperial Guard regiments. Their techniques for working with exotic materials recovered from ancient sites have proven invaluable to Mechanicus research projects. Most significantly, their integration of aesthetic beauty with functional excellence has challenged prevailing Imperial attitudes that view ornamentation as wasteful frivolity. The psychological effects of this craftsman culture extend throughout the chapter in ways that shape every aspect of their operations. Battle brothers who spend hours carefully shaping metal develop patience and attention to detail that serves them well in tactical planning and combat execution. The satisfaction of creating something beautiful and useful provides emotional balance against the stress of constant warfare. The knowledge that they possess skills beyond destruction gives them confidence in their ability to rebuild what enemies have torn down. This emphasis on creation has influenced the chapter's approach to technology in ways that distinguish them from both the Mechanicus orthodoxy and the typical Space Marine pragmatism. Rather than viewing machines as sacred objects to be maintained through ritual or disposable tools to be replaced when broken, the Salamanders see technology as partnership between human creativity and mechanical capability. Their equipment receives constant small improvements and personalizations that enhance both performance and aesthetic appeal. The chapter's vehicles represent masterpieces of this integrated approach. Each Rhino transport, Land Raider battle tank, and Thunderhawk gunship in their fleet has been individually modified and decorated to reflect both the personality of its crew and the broader artistic traditions of the chapter. These modifications go far beyond mere decoration to include functional improvements that often exceed the original design specifications. The result is a fleet where no two vehicles are identical, yet all share unmistakable characteristics that mark them as products of Salamander craftsmanship. The cultural exchange that occurs when Salamander artificers work alongside civilian craftsmen on protected worlds has created lasting bonds that transcend typical military-civilian relationships. Local artisans learn techniques that improve their own work while teaching the Space Marines about regional traditions and materials. These collaborations have produced hybrid styles that incorporate Salamander technical excellence with local aesthetic preferences, creating unique artistic traditions that spread throughout regions under chapter protection. The chapter's approach to repairing and maintaining ancient artifacts demonstrates their unique perspective on the relationship between past and present. Where Mechanicus tech priests might focus on preserving original specifications, and the Adeptus Astartes generally prioritize functional restoration, Salamander artificers seek to understand the original creator's intentions and enhance them through careful improvement. This approach has yielded remarkable success in restoring ancient weapons and equipment to functionality that often exceeds their original capabilities. Recent discoveries in the deepest archives of Prometheus have revealed that Vulkan's own crafting techniques incorporated principles that modern Imperial science struggles to explain. Analysis of tools and weapons he created suggests the use of psychic manipulation at the molecular level, binding materials together through force of will as much as physical process. Understanding these techniques has become a holy quest within the chapter, with master artificers dedicating their entire careers to unlocking even fragments of their primarch's methods. The teaching of these advanced techniques requires more than technical instruction. It demands spiritual preparation that transforms the craftsman as much as his work. Candidates for such training undergo rigorous meditation practices, ethical instruction, and psychological evaluation to ensure they possess the moral foundation necessary to handle such profound creative power. The knowledge that their abilities could be misused creates a sense of responsibility that influences every aspect of their work. The chapter's relationship with the Adeptus Mechanicus has been enriched by their craftsman culture in ways that benefit both organizations. While tech priests appreciate the Salamander's technical innovations and quality of workmanship, they have also learned to value the chapter's emphasis on understanding the spiritual dimensions of creation. Several Mechanicus facilities now include meditation spaces and artistic workshops modeled on Salamander practices, acknowledging that pure technical knowledge without wisdom can lead to the kind of disasters that plagued humanity during the dark age of technology. The influence of Salamander craftsmanship extends into aspects of chapter life that might seem unrelated to forge work. Their approach to strategic planning emphasizes the same patience and attention to detail that characterizes their metalworking. Their methods of training new recruits incorporate the master-apprentice relationships that define their craft traditions. Even their battlefield tactics reflect craftsman values, with careful preparation and precise execution taking precedence over brute force solutions. As the chapter continues to evolve in response to the galaxy's growing challenges, their craftsman culture provides stability and identity that transcends changing circumstances. Whether facing new types of enemies, adapting to technological innovations, or expanding into previously unknown regions of space, the Salamanders carry with them the confidence that comes from knowing they can create solutions to problems that pure military might cannot solve. Their forges burn eternal, symbols of humanity's capacity to build beauty and meaning even in the midst of cosmic horror, proof that the creative spirit represents the truest victory over the forces that seek to drag civilization back into darkness and chaos.